If you're not seeing your launches do as well as they used to, you aren't alone. So many people now come to me saying they used to make decent revenue from their launches and they're doing exactly the same thing, but nobody's buying, or a lot less people are than before, even when their audience is growing. If this is happening to you, your issue is right there. You're doing the same thing as before. In the last few years, everything has changed when it comes to launching. All businesses and industries evolve, and that's all that's happened here. Your audiences have evolved too. They're used to seeing the launch formulas. They know what's coming. They've very likely been burned by things before, and they're much smarter now about what they invest into. In 2020, maybe even 2021, you could rock up with a webinar and 7 launch emails and off you go. But that won't cut it anymore. So I'm going to tell you 5 things to look at to get your launches making revenue again. First, start with your offer. An offer that worked well a few years ago may well not work now. Whereas before people were buying nice to haves, that doesn't happen now. The world and the economy has been through some tricky times the last couple of years, and that's when people start to buy must-have items only. So you need to look at your offer and make it a need to have. This doesn't always come down to changing the product. It's usually a case of changing the messaging. Why is it important that your ideal client has this right now rather than waiting? What in your messaging is making it completely irresistible, that your audience is chomping at the bit to buy it? Always start with reviewing your offer and whether it's even what people need anymore. Number 2, look at your audience. Look at 2 things with your audience. First, is your audience made up of the right people that want your offer and what it looks like right now? If yes, how much have you grown that audience since the last time you launched? What most people don't realise is if you've offered the same product before, then when looking at your audience figures, those people are less likely to buy, so they can't be counted in your conversion rate figures. Let's say you need 10 people to buy and your conversion rate is usually 1% of your audience. If you had 1,000 in your audience last time and you now have 1,200, you're actually only launching to 200. Maybe a few more who couldn't buy last time and they were waiting for this time, but mainly those who had the chance to buy can't be counted. So in your conversion, you need to realise you're going to likely get 1% of 200, not 1,200. Number 3. Audience growth should be done 3 to 6 months pre-launch. But as well as this, you can give your audience a big growth spurt as part of the launch process. I call this the ultra build. And we've successfully added 3,000 to 6,000 new people to our list in the month of launch doing this. A lead magnet to your usual audience is unlikely to cut it. You need to use something you know people really want and would pay for, and couple it with a way to supersize the outreach, but as part of the launch, not separate to it. Number 4, it's no longer enough to have one launch event and some emails. In my new launch framework, you need at least 3 events which tap into different needs using buyer psychology. Firstly, not everyone is buying your thing for the same reason. And yet when you do one event like a webinar, you're generally telling people one problem you are solving. But also, your audience have very different buyer personas. What works for one type of buyer won't work for a different buyer. There are 5 types of launch buyers that I've found, and I target them all using my performance personas model. By having multiple events of different styles, you'll hit the needs of more of your audience, tripling your buying figures for your launch. And number 5, it's no longer enough to sell your thing in the last 5 minutes of a webinar, challenge or live. Most people don't have the attention span these days to even get to that part. Sell throughout your entire launch period in different ways. This doesn't mean that cart needs to open at the beginning. Selling is more than just that first cart open piece. It means talking about what you'll be opening right from the start. This way, it means you can counter objections that people might have throughout and using the launch process to do it. Your audience know you're going to be selling them something. Trying to hide that in some way just makes them a bit uneasy. Plus, using ethical selling psychology as you go will mean your buyers are much more likely to buy.